Darian Phillips. You know why you're here. No more games. Who else are you working with? Darian.
Detective. Please, I just
30.
need a minute.
"30 kids dead because of you." Rachel Dowbridge, Kellen Johnson, McKenna Wright,
Detective.
Mark Porter, Joshua Wright, Alice Chiefs.
Detective.
Pastor, let me do my job. "18 years old, and you're responsible for one of the worst school shootings in American history. There is no room for negotiation. You will spend the rest of your life in a prison cell. And you will cooperate." After the incident, the police said that they found a note from you stating that you were part of a teen cult, that you guys were planning more shootings, that you wouldn't talk unless we brought your pastor in. You got what you want. Now talk. Darian!
Detective. Let me talk to him.
Pastor.
Please? Darian, there's no way around this. There's no way out of this. What you did was unspeakable. But now's the time to make the right decision. You can't go back and change what you did. But you can choose what you do right now. I've known you for a very long time. And I know there's good in you. And I know that deep down, right now, you want to make the right decision. Think of your parents. What would they want you to do?
Pastor, thank you for being here. I know this doesn't make much sense, but hopefully it will by the end of this conversation. You being here is very important to me. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Just listen. I wasn't always like this. At one point, I was a normal kid. When I left that note, I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't realize what It wasn't until after the shooting that I realized what I did. People I destroyed. The lives that I took. I'm a monster. And I deserve the worst punishment that this system has to offer me. I don't deserve to live.
Who else are you working with?
Detective? Just listen. I'm not right. But I still want you to know what made me do it and why I did it. I was a normal kid at one point. Well, not normal, still weird. But Mom used to call me an old soul. Said I was too grown for my age. I miss her. I don't talk like everyone else. I don't think like everyone else. I obviously have problems like everyone else, but right now I'm feeling a lot of things. Anger, regret, but mostly anger. I don't have the right to judge anyone. So when I say what I'm about to say, I'm also talking about myself. We live in a world full of hypocrites and liars. Full of people who claim to be one thing but then act like something else. Full of people who talk about oppression but are the very ones that cause division. A perfect example of our society is the year 2020. 2021, 2022, 23, let's take a leap. 2055, no matter where we are in time, we will never forget the year 2020. It changed the world forever. Tragedy, death, racism. All of these things destroyed lives. But the one thing we leave out of that list is hypocrisy. The thing that we leave out of that list are the lives that were destroyed way before 2020. The thing we leave out of that list are the crimes that were ignored because they didn't fit the status quo of being breaking news. We sit here and emphasize one sin and then sweep other sins under the carpet like they don't exist. And that hypocrisy is what destroys lives. I'm proof of that. I grew up in a good home. A loving mother, caring father, a younger brother. My dad was a minister, a bishop. My mom also a minister. They traveled the world, preaching the gospel and saving lives. They helped thousands. They weren't loved by everyone, but were very well-known people. And helped a lot of people. They always wanted to take the church on a missions trip overseas, but never could because of the laws put in place at the time. The state didn't allow churches to travel because they didn't want them to cause religious conflict. My dad fought for years to break that law. He took it to Congress, petitioned it. The whole thing made headlines. People knew what was going on. When I was 7, they finally took the trip. Me and my brother stayed home with a babysitter. I'm sorry. One day after service, they were kidnapped by a group of terrorists. They were tortured, raped, and beheaded, all because of their beliefs. The whole thing was recorded. You can hear the screams of my dad begging for them to stop. Each terrorist taking turns on my mom. The whole thing recorded. The next day, the breaking news was Golden State's championship victory. Me and my brother were put in foster homes. We didn't have anyone in the area to take care of us, so we would always move from foster home to foster home to foster home to foster home to foster home. And about a month later, a black single father of 2 was killed by a racist white officer. A statue of the father was made. $2 million was raised by the White House through a fundraiser to help take care of the kids. Me and my brother saw that on the news a month after our family was forgotten. After a year of still moving between foster homes, we finally got adopted by a good family. It didn't matter how old we were. It didn't matter that we were black and they were white. They didn't see color. They just saw us for who we were as people. Our new mom taught us how to ball and how to talk to girls and play catch. Our new dad worked hard every day as a police officer, but still made time to show us just how much he loved us. Just last year, my dad saved someone's life. This gang member pulled a gun on this girl, and my new dad got there just in time to stop it. He gave the guy 5 chances to put down the gun. 5. But he wouldn't listen. He shot the girl, and my dad shot him right after. He used CPR and pumped her chest for 30 minutes to keep her alive. And she lived. The guy didn't make it. The kids were upstairs, but he saved a life. Within hours, my dad was fired from the police station, labeled a racist. My whole school celebrated. Everybody on the news made him out to be this horrible, racist white guy. 2 months ago, my brother. My brother was riding his bike in the neighborhood. But he went a little too far down the street. After my dad lost his job, we couldn't afford the place we were staying at, so we had to move to a rougher part of town. He was riding his bike, and he was shot in the head in the middle of the road. He was 13. Nobody rioted. Nobody protested. Barely anyone heard about the incident because the shooter was black, just like my brother. I guess black on black crime doesn't matter anymore. You see, my life is just one example. There are billions of people in this world. There are billions of people hurting with no help. There are billions whose stories will never be heard because their story doesn't match up with what the news considers breaking news. You see, we've made justice a matter of perspective instead of a matter of truth. We preach freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Express your voice. Be who you need to be as long as it lines up with what everyone else agrees with. You can riot for racial injustice, but don't you dare riot for the lives of the unborn. You can march and have parades and awareness to equal rights for all, but don't talk about Jesus on the street. You see, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to talk about what we really stand for.
Just because there are things that you think are wrong doesn't give you the right to do what you did.
That's not what I'm saying. Racism is a tragedy. COVID-19 killed hundreds of thousands. What I did was unforgivable. And I will have to live with that decision for the rest of my life. I will have to sleep at night and hear the screams of the lives I took. I will have to feel the hurt of every mother and every father I took a child from. And there's nothing I can do to undo that decision. Nothing. I'm not the hero in this situation. All I'm saying is if we're going to talk about injustice, then let's talk about all injustice, not just what we consider bad news.
You're a murderer. How can you tell someone how to live? How can you sit there and act like you're some saint who's going to make a difference?
Like I said, I'm in no position to tell anyone how to live. I'm not a hero. I'm not innocent. All I'm saying is that there are people out there that are just as guilty as me that will never see justice. Look at where you two sit. And look at where I sit. I'm considered guilty. You're considered innocent, even though we both have blood on our hands.
This is a waste of time. I'm not going to ask you again.
I'm not finished. Let's talk about you, detective. You've worked in the police force for over 20 years. Every day, you come into work treated like a saint. You're praised for representing the American way. But just last week, you let a rapist walk free because he was willing to give up intel on another case. You're the very people that give the death sentence to someone that stole a dollar bill, but would let someone like me, a killer, a murderer, will get little to no time, while someone who stole money will get life. Just goes to show the type of things that we prioritize.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't? Okay, detective, then tell me this. Where were you when I needed help? Those kids that lost their dad to that racist cop got justice, as they should. But where were you when I lost everything? When my parents were killed because of their beliefs. When my black brother was killed in public by a black thug! I'll tell you what you did. You turned the blind eye and pretended like it never happened. You give justice to who you want to give justice to. Pastor Jake, you represent the false gospel.
Darian.
I've known you all my life. You knew my birth parents, my adoptive parents used to go to your church, and you run a very successful ministry. Tens of millions of people tune in online to watch your service, thousands of people in regular attendance. All of these people with all of these testimonies claiming that they found God and they gave their life to Christ because of you. Everybody sees you as this hero, as this second coming that's here to save the world. But you're not a pastor. You're not a church. You're just a man who uses God as a stage, an entertainment platform just to get what you want. 2020 was a tragic year. Millions of people lost, and these people needed hope. These people needed love. You're supposed to preach the gospel, to bring real hope and real love to people, to bring people to Christ. But instead, you just went along with how the world was acting in panic. There was no difference between you and the world. The funniest thing was how people cried out to God as soon as their lives were turned upside down. In 2020, people cried out to God and made it seem like God was crying in heaven, when in reality, he's been crying way before 2020. It's been 2020 for God for years. And when these people cried out and looked for hope and asked for help, and instead of you helping them, you just spit a bunch of fake doses of generic fake love and hope instead of giving them the real power to change them. You wouldn't dare mention Jesus because that's not politically correct, because you were more concerned about staying on the safe side than being on the right side. And that is what turns people away from faith.
That's enough.
The saddest part is that it wasn't just you, it was all of these so-called pastors and bishops. Pastors encouraged people to pray and rebuke COVID in the name of Jesus, but never did any of that for the false gospel, or the millions of people in need of Jesus, or the millions of people that are killed before they even come out of the womb every year. Churches spoke against racism, but keep quiet the millions of people around the world that are arrested just for expressing their beliefs. You want to talk about hope, and you want to talk about COVID, and you want to encourage these people to stay safe, but you refuse to talk about the millions of Christians in third world countries that are killed and slaughtered just like my parents every day just because of their beliefs. You were supposed to help.
You killed all those people. You took their lives, and now you sit there and tell me what I'm doing wrong? You shouldn't even have God's name in your mouth right now. Why should anybody believe anything you say? Do you think you really represent who God is?
I'm nowhere close, but neither are you. If you want to be like the world, go ahead, but don't call yourself a church because you make God sick, just like me. And I suffered for it. I suffered for it. So my question to you all is, why are you sitting over there instead of right here beside me? The note doesn't mean anything. There was never a cult. At the time, I just made that up so you guys would have a reason to question me, so I could just say what I needed to say.
Why?
I just needed to show you that you and me are the same.